Hello there. Welcome to Healthy Cooking with your friendly Italians. I'm Jim Bero.
And I'm Marilyn Bero.
And today we have a very special guest
Yes.
with us who is going to teach us how to make bread, which I know nothing about.
And
Marilyn
I know
knows
nothing about.
We've got some bread recipes, and we are, of course, we're going to use that bread to make bread.
Some interesting soups and some interesting
and
recipes.
of course, they're Italian.
Of course.
And we're also going to take a little journey across this country that Peter and I have traveled on our bellies. Welcome, Peter.
Glad to be here, Jim. I appreciate you letting me share in this experience.
Well, it'll be an experience.
It was an experience traveling across the country.
I'm sure it was.
You all know Peter Koch. Everybody in Seneca Falls has probably bought a car off of him. Well, Peter has retired, and now he has gone into other things, such as you've probably seen him around town picking up rototillers that he's sending to Nicaragua. And he makes bread, and he's a travel buddy of ours.
So he's made bread even when he was still working, but he's really honed his skills as a bread maker. So he'll give you some really good hints.
And the reason why he's such a good bread maker, he's half Italian.
That probably helps.
That probably helps.
But my grandfather baker was German.
There you go.
What a combination, German-Italian. Peter lives here in Seneca Falls. He cares about this community, and he has helped make Seneca Falls a better place to live, along with his wonderful wife, Gretchen.
Right.
Who is a certified master gardener.
She is, and has beautiful, beautiful gardens.
And was president of the library.
Yes.
National Women's Hall of Fame.
She was involved with the hall.
A long-distance runner.
And she also works at the House of Concern, does a lot for the House of Concern also.
And a great cook.
Mm-hmm.
Does she have any Italian blood in her?
She is pure German.
There you go.
Well,
but she loves to cook.
Yes, she does, and she's a very good cook.
It is a pleasure to have you with us, and it's a pleasure that we can call you our friend.
Well, thank you very much. And since you are leading me into this, I really should say that I have had a very, very successful life because of this community. I came here in 1970. My first job was at the local Ford dealership that isn't here anymore. I got fired, and it kind of got better and better from there on, and it's all because of the people of Seneca Falls, Waterloo, Geneva, Auburn.
Absolutely.
I've been very fortunate.
And we promote it all the time. Seneca Falls is a great place to live. And one of the things that is making it better is the aroma that goes through the streets as you make bread.
Well, the smell of bread baking is always wonderful.
Right. So let's talk, Peter, about bread and your technique of making breads. And as I said before, I don't know a thing about making breads, but you are going to inform me and Marilyn and all those people out there about bread. And we're going to be there's a recipe that you can scroll down to called Crusty Italian Cheese Bread. And Peter is the author of this. And let's discuss what you do and how you do it. And I'm sure I'll have some questions as we go through this thing.
Well, first of all, a little bit of a local plug, because the best bread around is at Pat Sandroni's Noni's.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think Cougar makes it. And the way this all started was I went down to get a loaf of bread one day,
Okay.
and it was a Monday and they were closed.
Okay.
And you needed a bread fix.
I needed some Italian bread. So I cheat a little bit. I went home and I took out my bread machine, but I put it on the dough setting. And I found at that point, a recipe for making dough for Italian bread, and I followed it, and it came out pretty good. So I really got interested. My grandfather was a baker, had a bake shop,
Okay.
as did
That's where it comes from.
his
Okay.
brothers worked for him too. My dad used to tell me you could tell who was baking bread that day by the color of the crust.
There. And how
So-
did that change?
Well, I think it had to do with consumption of alcohol.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Uncle Herman sometimes would leave it in a little bit too long.
I see. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So I really enjoy. I've got a lot of satisfaction out of making this bread. So I started hunting for other recipes, mostly on the internet, and then developing them in a way that pleased me. And I have really 4 breads that I make that I like. I have an Italian bread, an Italian cheese bread, which you've spoken of, a Jewish rye bread, and an oatmeal bread. And I've really learned a lot about it, and I've made my own changes. The first thing I did was I eliminated putting butter or shortening in,
Okay.
and I use olive oil.
There you go.
Can't go wrong there.
No.
Well, when you use olive oil, I've learned the bread lasts longer before it gets stale.
Okay.
Probably that sounds
Now
reasonable.
you're using a bread machine. You could leave it in the bread machine, and the bread machine would cook it, right?
Did you ever see a loaf of bread that was cooked by a bread machine?
No,
No.
It looks like a person with a square head and a funny hat.
I see.
Okay.
It's just not attractive, and it's not easy to slice, and it doesn't taste as good because you haven't made it crusty. You can never get it crusty.
So what you've done is you've taken the ability to
I
churn
just
it
don't.
up.
I just don't like to knead bread.
So the dough
Oh.
machine
The
needs,
dough machine, the
Boy.
bread machine needs the bread.
That's the only thing I like to do is knead the bread.
Well, you can
Ooh.
stop out the house
Ooh.
every 3
It's a
days.
very
and-
seductive thing.
Right. Well, never mind. So,
So all right, so you're gonna make the dough in the bread machine,
Right.
and then you're gonna let it rest for a while. Is that right?
Well, there are a couple things I do. First of all, I've also made another change from the usual recipes that
Right.
call for sugar, and I use honey instead of sugar.
That's a good
that's
idea.
always a good substitute.
And that
Yes.
I think it's a much better substitute.
Okay.
And then what I do, Jim, and these are things that I've just learned as I've gone along, is after the dough is finished, what the bread machine calls its first rise, I let it sit there for another half hour, and it rises more.
Right in the bread machine?
Just leave it in the bread
Okay.
machine. Leave the cover down.
Right.
And after that half hour or 45 minutes, and a half hour is what you have to, but if you just leave it, if you got to go do something else, if it sits in there for an hour, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Then I take it out of the bread machine and I punch it down.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that do? I mean, does
It gets a lot of air out of it. I know that.
You know, they talk about the second,
It's also-
a second rising
takes
usually.
the aggressiveness out?
Well, no, it just makes it,
Oh,
I
okay.
think it makes it a little bit more dense, doesn't it?
It makes it more dense, and Jim, I think you have talked to me about a second rising making a difference.
Yeah.
So I punch it down and then shape it into a loaf, and I let it rise again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then I put it, if I don't have a pizza stone or a cloche.
A cloche. What is a cloche?
A cloche is something my wife told me I should start to use to make bread, that it's kind of a terracotta pan that has a cover.
Okay.
And you can also use it for cooking. I think she makes
It
stuff in it.
Yeah, she probably makes a
Stews
stew
or
or
something.
something
Yeah.
of
Okay.
that nature, I would think.
But what that does is you bake the bread at a little bit lower temperature, And I have two cloches. One is round for making round loaves, and one is long that makes a traditional looking loaf. And that way you make a very well shaped loaf.
Does it also
easy to
create
slice.
a better crust?
It creates a better crust. There are a couple things you do to enhance the crust. If you're not using a cloche, if you're using a pizza stone or pizza peel or a cookie sheet, first thing you do is you put down some cornmeal so it doesn't stick.
Right.
You shape the loaf, you let it rise, and then you cook it, but you spritz it with water before you put it in the oven.
Mm-hmm.
And that's whether it's on the
Cloche.
pizza peel or in the cloche.
Okay. Jim, you have a beautiful loaf over there next to you. Why don't you show them?
I was waiting for him. Are we ready for it?
I think they should see what a beautiful.
at
And
that.
was this made in the cloche?
That was made in the cloche.
All
yes.
right, so that's how it comes out of the cloche.
That's the shape it has.
Yeah,
If I
Makes it easier to make sandwiches.
I see.
you hear what he said? Sandwiches.
Well,
That's the right way to pronounce it. Sandwich.
Jim always said sandwich. It's sandwich. Yes, it's English. Sandwich.
Hey, I'm Italian. What do you want from me?
But in both, yes, Italians do say sandwich.
Now, I noticed, Peter, that besides the honey and the Parmesan cheese, and you put a little garlic powder in this thing, you also put a half a cup of semolina, plus the regular flour. What does the semolina? Is that your invention, or
It was my idea to put it in because it's an Italian flour.
Right.
All right.
And after I put it in, I found out it tasted a little better. And you told me it tasted a little. And I don't know I think it probably adds a little bit to the density.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
But
And that's your favorite bread at Noni's
Yep,
anyway. Is the
that's right.
all of us love the semolina bread. Yes.
And then you do something that I think really, really helps make that crust really nice and crusty. Is you spray the oven,
no, I spray the bread.
spray the bread, and then
But then, and I learned this watching the Cooking Channel. It's not my idea. You throw in a handful of ice cubes.
Right into the
Okay.
bottom of the oven.
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
in the bottom of the oven, and that makes it steam up, and steam is what makes the crusty bread.
There you
and
go.
lo and behold, this is what you come up with: this beautiful loaf of bread. So the recipe is
This is the
a-
crusty Italian cheese
crusty
bread that is on
Italian cheese
is
bread.
on
and you can
at the end of our program.
yes
That recipe will be there.
Yep. And now, what I should throw in a couple of things of what to do with this bread, which are both Italian. A
Right.
couple recipes that are available. One is called pan santo, which is holy bread or anointed bread. And what you do is you're taking a slice of bread and you're anointing it with some a combination of greens and stock, and you simmer that for 25 or 30 minutes, and salt and pepper, and you put it on the bread. Now, if you're using the cheese bread, you don't need to.
Well, a little bit more cheese might.
You could, and you
might
rub it
help.
with garlic,
Right.
and you have anointed this beautiful loaf of bread, and now you can sit down and eat it with a glass of wine.
And the other thing about any of these recipes is that it's another way of using. If the bread gets a little stale, then this is a great way of using these wonderful breads.
And that's a good lead-in
To the next one.
because we're talking. The next one is called a aqua cotta, which means stone soup,
Mm-hmm.
and it's from Tuscany. And in Tuscany they don't use salt, and the bread does not.
The bread
last.
stales in one day when we were in Tuscany. I mean, you could eat it the day you bought it from the bakery, and the next day you'd have to find something else to do with it.
And it's a bread that the poor people ate because all they did is they boiled some vegetables,
Right.
and then took a slice of bread, put it in a bowl, a soup bowl, and poured this combination over it. Sprinkle a little cheese, a little olive oil, and you got a very inexpensive and hearty dinner. So those are two things that you can do with this wonderful, wonderful bread, or you could just cut it,
You can
dip it in a little olive oil,
with
or
some
you can go down to
flavorings.
Noni's and get that.
They have dipping
Yeah, the
sauces
dipping
down
sauce
there,
is good.
dipping
So,
seasonings. Yeah, all those good things.
When it really starts to get stale, it makes pretty good croutons.
I bet it
I
does.
can imagine.
I bet
I
it
can
does.
imagine. Or you can make bread soup.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's also bread salads in those
Bread
countries.
salads,
And
right.
There's all kinds of things.
I-
They never wasted bread in Italy that
Well,
I
the
know of. But
bread,
they
you
always
can't,
had
you can't
some,
beat. Your bread
some
is wonderful.
recipe for it.
So those recipes are all available that you can look up, and I didn't want to get into them too much and there's also the Jewish rye bread and the Italian crusty Italian bread, and those are all available.
And the
to-
oatmeal bread
and
that
the-
he
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So you might want to look at those, but we have other things that we need to discuss besides.
Yes, you and Peter can talk about your wonderful escapades across country.
Peter
Gretchen and I did other things.
Well, Peter and I, on 2 occasions, have traveled around this country on our bellies. Peter invited me to go to Houston with him to pick up a white Jaguar with a red leather interior that was absolutely beautiful. And I brought with me what we would consider the Bible for crossing the country by a couple by the name of Marilyn and Michael Stearns called Road Foods. And we went out of our way, both on this trip and another trip after this, to eat at these are not high classy types
well,
of
they
joints.
they had a program on NPR that they spoke about these kinds of things. And actually, Jim, when we took the boys across country, we
30
used
years ago.
many years ago was when they first printed the first one. I mean, they've printed several since, but we used the same book as to finding these interesting little out of the way places.
So, Peter, let's talk about some of our experiences on the first trip with our going down to pick up the Jag. And the first one that comes to mind for me is when we're going through Memphis and there's a hurricane in New Orleans, and everybody has moved out of there and they're trying to find a room, and we're trying to find a room. Now, mind you, when Peter and I travel, we don't want to spend over $40 a night for a room. And we did that in most occasions until we get to Memphis, right? So now we're looking for a place. We're not having much success. And we come to this flea-bitten, and remember the words, flea-bitten, motel. And we walked in. The rooms here should have been like $5 a night. They were, what were they, Peter? $65, $70 a night?
They were
out of our budget.
Supply and demand. They were
Right.
very expensive.
Right.
Because of the fact that people were coming up from Hurricane Katrina
Right.
looking for places they had no place to go.
They had no place
Right.
to go, right.
And we went to the front desk. Have any rooms? Yep. How much? I don't know, $80, $90, something like that. And they had a sign. And Peter, can you tell the people what was on that sign?
The sign sitting right there on the desk at the hotel said, "We have bed bugs."
I guess they must have been proud. He said, what do you what do you mean? What do you mean? We got bed bugs. We just let you know. So we had a very interesting night.
Well,
That was
we
when the big scare about bed bugs in hotels and motels, yes.
Well, we were safe because when we went in, I have to tell you, Jim picked up each sheet, each mattress, and went all over looking for bed bugs.
There you go.
And
That's
we were lucky. We ended up in a room without bed bugs. But I have never forgotten going into a motel and seeing a sign that says, "We
I
have
can't
bed
imagine
bugs."
it. I don't think Gretchen and I would have stayed there. I
Actually,
feeling that would have happened.
the problem that we had, Peter and I, was not bed bugs or not only this night, but our biggest problem that we had was Peter snores. And Peter,
Only Peter?
Just Peter. I didn't hear myself.
Jim makes noises, but he doesn't snore.
Oh, all right.
And the first night, I wake up in the middle of the night with Peter snoring. I am throwing things at him. I take the Bible out. I throw it at him. And nothing, it works for a little bit and he goes back. I ended up having to put, I went into the bathroom and got tissues and put them in my ears so I could go to sleep. And the next day, we stopped off at Walmart and I bought earplugs. And that way I could sleep. Right, Peter?
I woke up in the middle of the night to find you trying to kick me.
Dear, dear, dear.
But let's talk about food.
Yes. Let's talk about some of the wonderful food.
As we headed south, we were in Pittsburgh. We went to, this is before Memphis, we went to Primanti Brothers in Pittsburgh, which is in the warehouse area along the river.
Right. This place has been there forever. It was there when the steel mills were there, and they serve a sandwich. So tell them about the sandwich.
The sandwich is huge, and it just, I got to tell you, it has it's got a burger in there somewhere. It's got corn in there. It's got all kinds of salad fixings.
Got French fries in it.
Got French fries in it. It's about that thick, and it has just been by the work of the congressman from the Pittsburgh area, and this is not a joke. It has just been designated as a national treasure.
Yeah.
Primanti's Brothers sandwich.
It was, well, no, I mean, like the garbage plate is for Rochester, this is for Pittsburgh.
And this
somewhat like it, too, when you think about it.
Yeah. Oh, people were there. There was a football game on for some reason. I don't know whether it was a Saturday or not. And people were there with their children and with these huge sandwiches and having a beer and watching a game.
And you mentioned the beer. They had Iron Horse beer.
Iron City beer.
Iron City beer.
Yeah. And
I actually think Lydia has featured that in her series on Foods of America. I think she went to, there was a program about that.
These trips that I've taken with Jim are just, they're so educational. I did not know that Cincinnati, Ohio was the chili capital of the world.
Right.
And a completely different chili than most people are accustomed to.
Not only that, but a completely different presentation of the chili because they don't serve it in bars. They serve it in restaurants, and you can't get a beer.
Can't get a beer.
And Jim explained, how the different ways you can have the chili in Cincinnati.
Chocolate in it, too?
Well, the guy that started this was Greek.
Okay.
And got chocolate. But you can have chili. You walk in, you don't say, I want chili. You go say, I want it one way, two way, three way, four way, or five way. And that all depended on what was
the ingredients.
You had one way was just the chili. Then there was chili and rice. There was chili, rice, and cheese. There was chili, rice, cheese, and onions. What am I missing something else?
Don't they use pasta? I thought they used spaghetti.
Pasta, yeah.
I thought they used spaghetti in it.
Spaghetti.
Okay?
Yeah,
that's right. Yes.
So we had that, and we also stopped and had barbecue there too.
That's right.
We had a lot of barbecue.
I'm sure.
And then I remember, Peter, do you remember we were in Texas and we had a chicken tortilla soup? You remember that?
Yes. Yep.
That was excellent. And what about the wonderful wine that we had in Ohio?
We went into a restaurant. We went to one of Jim's $39 motels, and I forget what city in Ohio, but it's where Mid-Ohio Raceway is. And the hotel people gave us a choice of two restaurants. One was a chain like McDonald's, and the other was a local restaurant. So we chose the local one because we found out that the local food is better wherever we go.
That was
and we sat down, and it was kind of a fish campy sort of place, and it was not a fish camp, but it was a checkered tablecloth.
Yes, looked like one. Yeah.
And Jim, being Italian and a connoisseur of great wines, ordered a bottle of wine. So he selected the wine. The lady brings it out. And she had no idea how to present or how to open the bottle of wine.
She didn't even know how to open it?
No.
So Jim said to her, "Let me help you." And so she gave him the towel and the corkscrew, and the first thing he did was he put the towel over his arm and showed the young lady how to present it. And then he took the corkscrew and pulled the cork, and he smelled the cork, and he poured a little bit of wine in the glass and showed the legs the wine had and the aroma and all the things that fancy people.
I overplayed it.
I'm sure you did.
all the things that fancy people do with wine.
Right.
I hope Amy Padula isn't listening to this.
That's right. She's a
But
wine snob.
I looked up, and there are about 12 people standing around our table, most of them from the staff of the restaurant. They're out of the kitchen. A couple people have aprons on.
Right.
And I said, "What are all you people doing?" And they said, "Well, we're watching." I said, "Why are you watching us?" They said, "No one has ever ordered a whole bottle of wine here before."
Okay.
All
That
right.
tells you what kind of place that was.
But-
All right.
But we had experiences like that all around the country, and other experiences too, because we took a second trip completely across the country
Yes,
to
you did.
California, and we went to the south rim of the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And as a little boy, I had been intrigued with Brighty of the Grand Canyon, so they had a stuffed Brighty there that I got to see, and it was fascinating for me. And it was a longer story than I'm able to tell, but it was very important to me. And then we went to, heading out for California, we went through, I think, St. George, Utah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but before we got to St. George, the highlight was spending a night in Tuba City,
New
New Mexico,
Arizona.
Arizona.
Okay.
If you've ever read books by John Hillerman,
That's right.
John Hillerman writes a series of novels about the Navajo Indians of today, and focused on the Navajo Police Department. And the police station is in Tuba City.
That's right.
And I saw it on the map. I said, "Jim, there's Tuba City.
And I
We
went,
got to go
"Ray,
there."
Ray!
So we went to Tuba City. Jim didn't like the first motel I found, which I believe was a converted high school.
Okay.
But then the second one was a little bit nicer, so he said we could stay there. They didn't have bed bugs.
Good.
Nope, didn't have bed bugs.
So that was just another part of the trip.
And then, Peter, remember, we would go out of our way when we found a restaurant.
When you found the restaurants that were in this
and
book.
we were,
Yes, going back
we
to
were,
the book.
I think in New Mexico, we were going to a barbecue place. Was that New Mexico, Peter?
Yes.
And we went there, and we finally found this place, this little burg, and it's closed. And this nice woman came by and says, "Can I help you?" Says, "Well, we wanted to go to this restaurant. It's closed. Just follow me." So we followed her to a gas station, and we had barbecue, right?
The best barbecue
Really?
we found in New Mexico, in Arkansas, in a couple of other states. The best barbecue we found was always in gas stations.
Always in
Don't
gas
ask me
station.
why.
Don't know.
Now, we go to North Carolina a lot, and you don't have to go to a gas
No, you
station to
don't.
get barbecue.
We
Right.
used to go to North Carolina all the time. I don't remember going to gas stations for barbecue.
And so we had good food. The one place that wasn't good, it was one of the places that was sort of hotsy-totsy. It was over in Kansas City. Remember the stockyards, the steakhouse?
Went to a place in Kansas City where you should be able to get the best steak in the
You
world.
would think so.
It was terrible.
Terrible.
It was awful.
And
the
then
meat
we
was a little tough. The service was lousy.
Right.
We won't go back there.
we
Okay.
got to go back because we got to go back out that way because we went to a spot where you can stand in one spot and you stand in 4 states. And we were really excited about that until we found out that it was the wrong spot.
2 years later, they declared that
That wasn't
the change of the earth was such that when they put the state borders in, they put them in the wrong place, so they moved them. So I think we were about 12 feet off, Jim.
Yeah. So we're going to have to go back and do that. And Peter, you mentioned Georgetown, Utah, which was a beautiful, beautiful place.
You would never think so. It's in the middle of the desert,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden we run into this city, and it has become apparently a retirement community for people from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised.
It was
Just above Nevada.
Yes. It was within driving distance of Vegas.
Yeah.
Vegas, okay.
So we had a great time, and we hopefully, before we get too old and can't figure out where the road is or get lost too often, we're going to do some more traveling on our bellies.
Love to do it.
Yes.
Can we still leave the ladies home?
Yes.
I think we'd be
It's
I think
prerequisite.
Gretchen and I could find something else
I don't
to
think
do.
they'd appreciate where we ate.
They wouldn't understand.
I think Gretchen and I could really find something we could do that would satisfy both of us. So,
Oh, Peter, I want to thank you a lot for coming on in and sharing with us some tales and the making of bread. And we surely enjoyed
and
having
we
you
hope
with
we've
us.
encouraged some people to
and,
try bread. If
right.
you have questions, you can send them. We send them to fingerlakes1.com in care of Healthy Cooking, and we'll try to answer them, or we'll get Peter to answer them.
Right.
So if you have any questions or would like to try it, I think it sounds interesting for most people if they would like to try to make their own bread. So
There is something comforting about
Yes,
making
there is.
bread. There is something wonderful about the aromas that permeate the house when you make fresh bread. And it just has a sense of accomplishment, and you're making good bread, and you all should give it a shot. It's really nice, and mostly in the winter. You know, now's
Yes.
the time to do it. Well, okay, so
I would like to mention one more thing.
go ahead.
Sure.
And there are people who will disagree with this because being against gluten is very in these
At this
days.
point, but I do think some people
The
are
best
sensitive.
flour you can use to make bread is high gluten flour.
Yes, I'm sure.
That I buy at Sauter's.
And I think some people are more sensitive at times. I don't think it's a complete allergy. I think it depends on what's happening with them. But if you can tolerate, and many people can tolerate, more people can tolerate
Yes.
gluten than don't,
Yep.
that you do use a
Makes
good
much
high
better
gluten
bread.
flour to make bread.
But you know, back 25, 30 years ago, I never heard of
I know, but
tolerancy for
yeah,
or
but it's
non-tolerance.
also been genetically changed the way they, you have all these experimental stations.
Right.
They've changed things in the way that they've experimented with it. So the grain that you had 25 years ago is quite different than the grain
Yes,
that you
that's right.
have today, particularly if it's coming from a huge multi-million or those huge farms that are
Right.
out west.
Right.
They're all very,
Yeah.
into all of that. So
Okay, next time we meet,
Yeah.
we have got another celebrity that's going to be with us, Marilyn.
okay,
We're going to have the owner of Avicoli's come in, and he's originally from Rome,
is.
and then went to New York City, and now has a place here, Avicoli's here in Seneca Falls, and everybody thinks about it as a pizza place, and they do make good pizzas.
they make good pizza.
But
They
they
also have a
also
good buffet
great-
at lunch.
Yeah, but great food.
But they do make very good food, and he's typically Italian. Extremely proud of his Roman history of food. But this is so Italian, I can't tell you.
Right.
I had aunts that used to talk with my mother for 3 hours or 2 hours discussing how they each made their sauce and which was better. So that gives you the basis of this food culture of Italian people.
And he makes good bread too.
Yes, he does.
So I hope you'll join us the next time we get together. And you take care, enjoy yourself, and have a good time. Ciao.
Ciao.